For decades, the 30-foot sailboat was considered the perfect size. Big enough to live on, small enough to handle alone. Then, it vanished. Not because sailors stopped wanting it, not because it stopped working. It disappeared when boat building stopped serving sailors and started serving spreadsheets. If you're planning to sail into your 50s, 60s, or beyond, understanding why this happened may be the most important decision you haven't thought about yet. Let's talk about what really killed the perfect 30-footer. To understand this, we need to step away from the water and examine the spreadsheets, deciding what gets built. From the 1980s through the early 2000s, the 30-foot sailboat was the sweet spot. Large enough to live aboard, small enough to handle easily, and affordable to buy new. Then new 30-footers began to vanish, and the math explains why. Buyers expect smaller boats to cost less, but most costs don't scale down. Engines, systems, tooling, and compliance are nearly the same. Without massive volume, margins collapse. Yard space and engines sharpen the gap. A 30-footer ties up production for weeks and earns a fraction of what a 45-footer returns from the same footprint. Financing seals it. Larger boats support loans, service, and resale ecosystems. Small boats often don't. Once fixed costs became unavoidable, small boats turned into a marginal liability. Builders survived by going bigger, and accessibility quietly disappeared. Did this surprise you? Or did you already feel that the industry had stopped building for sailors like you? In the modern marine industry, the disappearance of small sailboats isn't driven by sailors. It's driven by capital. For decades, many American and European builders were family-run brands focused on affordable, high-volume boats. That model cracked after the 2008 financial crisis. Demand collapsed, costs rose, and many builders turned to outside capital to survive. What followed was consolidation. Investors didn't buy boatyards. They bought portfolios. Strategy shifted from serving sailors to maximizing return on invested capital. From that lens, 30-foot boats failed the test. They attract DIY and first-time owners, generate limited long-term revenue, and compete with higher-margin models. Eliminating them simplifies pricing power and pushes buyers upward into controlled premium segments, parts, service, and financing. Pricing shifted from cost-plus to aspiration. Larger boats offer financing, charter exposure, and global resale. Small boats do not. When return on invested capital became the priority, small sailboats failed the test, regardless of demand. If you care more about effort, ownership reality, and margin for error than specs and hype, this channel is for you. Subscribe if you want honest boat decisions, not brochure sailing. The next reason is simple. The used market is overwhelming. From the 1960s through the 1980s, mass production sailboats flooded the 25 to 35-foot range. Built before computer-optimized laminates, these boats had thick, overbuilt hulls, often far stronger than required. With proper care, many remain structurally sound after 50 years. Today, tens of thousands still exist. They're not obsolete products. They're overbuilt assets from another industrial era. If builders tried to match that material thickness today, raw costs alone would make a new 30-footer unsellable. Modern production can't compete with past physical durability. And unlike cars or electronics, sailing performance hasn't changed much. A modern 30-footer isn't meaningfully faster than a classic Pearson or Catalina 30. When 90% of the experience costs $15,000, manufacturers can't justify $150,000. New 30-footers depreciate immediately. Well-refit classics often hold value. Builders know this and quietly step away from a fight they can't win. While not the main driver, modern emissions and safety rules sped up the disappearance of new 30-foot sailboats. Standards like CE certification in Europe and EPA rules in the US don't scale with size. Testing, documentation, and compliance costs are largely fixed, whether the boat is 30 feet or 50. On a $300,000 to $1 million yacht, those costs disappear into the margin. On a 30-footer competing with the used market, they can erase profit entirely. Tier-certified diesel engines now cost 20 to 50% more than older mechanical designs, even though small sailboats only need simple auxiliary power. The overhead is disproportionate. Engine makers face the same pressure. Simple, serviceable small diesels have been phased out in favor of larger, electronically controlled engines with higher margins, forcing builders into complexity buyers never asked for. Add rising product liability insurance and legal exposure, and small boats become high-risk, low-reward products. Regulation protects the environment, but it has quietly priced entry-level sailboats out of reach. If you're starting to ask which small boats still work in real life, this is an old video of mine that looks at the few smaller sailboats people actually live on today, and where each one quietly reaches its limits. From around 2010 onward, power assist technology quietly reshaped what sailors believe is manageable, and helped erase demand for new 30-foot boats. In the past, human strength was a built-in safety sensor. If you couldn't grind a winch, it meant the boat, or the conditions, were too much. Electric winches, thrusters, autopilots, and hydraulics broke that feedback loop, letting sailors handle much larger boats, right up until the system fails. Electric and hybrid propulsion accelerated the shift. Quiet power, instant torque, and push-button docking turned seamanship into a user experience. When a 45-footer feels effortless, buyers stop asking why smaller might be smarter. The business model shifted with it. A 30-footer can be maintained with hand tools. A tech-heavy 45-footer requires proprietary systems, dealer service, and recurring support. Simplicity doesn't generate revenue. As physical barriers disappeared, the 30-foot boat lost its advantage, not because it became worse, but because technology made bigger boats feel just as easy. While builders were already unable to compete with the oversupplied 30-foot used market, they were hit by another structural shift: the rise of catamarans. Since the 2000s, catamarans have reset buyer expectations. A 35 to 40-foot cat offers the living space of a 50 to 60-foot monohull. Wide beam, separate cabins, big galleys, outdoor living. Comforts a 30-footer simply can't deliver. Just as important, catamarans don't heel. For sailors, heel is language. For most modern buyers and their families, it's fear. When you can sail at 8 knots with a glass on the table, a heeling 30-footer feels like needless hardship. Charter economics sealed the shift. Cats let multiple couples share costs while keeping privacy, making them the most profitable assets in fleets. Capital followed returns into catamarans and away from small monohulls. The result wasn't a decline of the 30-foot boat. It was a replacement of what buyers believe a sailboat should be. When comfort goes up, do you feel risk actually goes down, or just feels that way. The final reason is strategic and mostly invisible to buyers. It's the quiet withdrawal of support. In other industries, it's called planned obsolescence. In boat building, it happens silently. The supply chain for small boats has fractured. OEMs no longer prioritize winches, spars, steering, or hardware sized for 30-footers. To simplify production, suppliers standardize around 40-foot-plus platforms. Builders are forced to use oversized, heavier, more expensive components, making a 30-footer irrational to price competitively. Hull molds follow the same math. Storage is costly, and once legacy 30-foot molds are sold or destroyed, restarting production requires millions that no spreadsheet will approve. The craft is fading too. Designing a good 30-footer demands rare skill, while modern production favors modular systems for larger boats. Training completes the cycle. Sailing schools teach on 40 to 45-foot boats with power assist, conditioning new sailors to see size as safety. At that point, the 30-foot sailboat isn't just unprofitable, it's been quietly cut off. At this point, the pattern is clear. 30-foot sailboats didn't disappear because they stopped working. They disappeared because the system stopped rewarding them. On a spreadsheet, small boats look inefficient. For sailors, especially as energy and margin for error matter more, they often make the most sense. So you're left with two honest paths. Path 1, buy used, and buy smart. Choose a proven 30-footer from the era before optimization erased durability. Refit it on your terms. Lower effort, predictable fatigue, known risks. Path 2, buy new and go big. Accept the technology, the complexity, and the ongoing cost. You're not buying simplicity. You're buying systems and the support around them. There's no wrong choice here, but there is a wrong assumption that newer is automatically better or bigger automatically safer. This channel exists for sailors choosing clarity over marketing. Subscribe if you want fewer regrets and better boats for real life. The right boat isn't about length, it's about effort and the margin you have when things stop being perfect. And if this made you rethink size, safety, and effort, this is the video explores why many experienced sailors eventually stop chasing boats that only look impressive on paper.